rare that a person changes their voice of an enduring character. I think Mel Blanc did that with Barney Rubble. I'm wondering, have you ever settled in on an enduring character's voice and maybe regretted your initial choice or wanted to change it? How?
You know, that's a great question too, because I'll tell you, Nelson, that was just, there was another actress. I have to preface this by saying, like, the producers on the show, when I was hired, you know, they didn't say, what we're going to do is find 6 incredibly versatile actors that can do, all of them do many, many voices each. I was brought in because I had met the casting director like a year and a half prior to that audition. And to date, she still insists that I'm the only actress that she ever met whose purpose wasn't to come to Hollywood and be on camera. Is that I came to do cartoons. And that was in '78 that I did that. And it's not like animation was, it was like cable television, it was Saturday morning fare, it was syndicated, it wasn't network prime time, and that's what I wanted to do. And I told her about my relationship with Dawes Butler, and she remembered that. So years later, when she was hired as the casting director for the Tracy Ullman show, where we started, she remembered me and brought me in for Lisa. Well, when we first started the show, I was cast as Bart, and then next thing you know, in the script, there were a couple other actresses that didn't quite make it. I don't know why, for whatever reason, but somebody else had done a character that had that sound similar to what came to be Nelson Muntz. I don't even think he had that name. It was just a kid. And they said, that's what we want you to do. So I did my version of that, and it stuck. And the ha-ha came out of it, and then he was definitely locked into place. But none of us have ever auditioned for our voices. I would read the script and go, oh, who's this? Oh, Todd Flanders. Okay, so he's the son, and in reading the script, I find out he's one of the Christian study buddies that lives next door to the Simpsons. How's he going to sound? And I just had to come up with the sound. But I've been doing cartoons professionally now at that time for 6 years. So I had like an arsenal, if you will, of characters. You know, my guys. And I tell you that because today, my challenge, when I encourage people, if you want to do this for a living, if people told you you have an unusual voice, or you say, I can do tons and tons of voices, your challenge is, how do I do this today? Because it's highly, highly competitive. My challenge is, how do I not sound like Bart, Nelson, Ralph, Kearney, Database, Maggie, Chucky, Todd Daring from Replacements, because their sound is so familiar with you, with the public. Nice challenge, though. I hope I answered your question.
You were orbiting around it and passed through it a few times.
Okay.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. First of all, did you ever think The Simpsons was gonna be that popular of a show? And
So let
second,
me answer that, and then you'll do the next one.
yeah.
No.
And
None of us knew. You would never know something like that. But I just knew that there wasn't anything, there was no animation on primetime television, and I knew it was going to create something, but I had no idea of the magnitude of what that would be.
yeah, and second question, what's the hardest part that you found during the 20 years of doing The Simpsons? What was the hardest part for supplying the voice of Bart? Because as a Simpsons fan, I've always wanted to know that.
The hardest part of specifically about Bart or
About pretty much your characters in general that you do in the show, like Ralph, Nelson. Like, what's the hardest part about it?
the hardest part about it, because I can look at it like the most challenging thing too, which would be a different question. I think the hardest part about doing voices, is probably, well, for me, I mean, professionally, it's like what I had said. How do I take that, and if I want to see, I just love what I do. At this point in time, I go, if I have an audition, you know, who's directing it, who wrote it, who are the other actors in it. And if it looks like, if I know the actors and it's going to be fun, that's how I make my decision now. But then the challenge is, how do I not sound like these other characters? Todd Daring, I sort of a lisp, sort of a, a lateral sort of a thing like that. That's to me is what I'm faced with.
Yeah.
Cool question.
Okay, I have two questions. One is that off. Okay, if
Am I
what
gonna be on YouTube?
I don't know, maybe. Anyway, so I have two questions. One is how to like when you do a voice for a really long time, does it make your throat hurt?
Well, Nelson's a bit challenging. I wouldn't say it makes my voice hurt, but I kind of go home with that sort of. A lot of you won't like Laura McCall. There's a Suzanne Plachette. There's a little bit of a huskiness that sets into my voice that I wouldn't be able to go off and do another job later on. I have to rest my voice, but I'm fine like the next day. But I kind of like it.
That's
You know?
good. And also,
You know?
I know you did Chucky on the Rugrats. I loved the Rugrats as a kid, so I was just wondering how did you juggle doing Bart on the Simpsons and going to the Rugrats? Like how?
Oh yeah, no problem.
Like.
Yeah, it's the best thing about voiceovers is that it doesn't really take a whole lot of time. It takes 4 hours to do The Simpsons, and when I did those, we booked it. They're on separate days. The recording of The Simpsons is always on a Monday, and I think Rugrats I did on Wednesdays.
Cool.
Yeah, we work it out.
There's not a lot of time in the makeup chair or anything like that, so you're just.
No, remember